Hello guys, welcome back to the OPD podcast with your host, myself, Jeffery, and online physique coach from the USA, Austin Stout. I've been pretty excited about this one. We've got a really cool guest on that I've been following for many years. He probably has no idea who I am, but I've followed him a long time in the kind of underground bodybuilding forum community. The one and only Alex Schinas, but as you guys probably know him as Reardon Metal, anybody that's been on the boards, so to speak, over the years. So I originally first heard of Alex probably back in GH15 days, early times. For anybody that was on that forum, the early days were probably the best days, in my opinion. And I really enjoyed my time over there, and then some time that I spent over at Get Big. I knew Alex as Reardon Metal, and then most recently on the Blast and Cruise forums. So yeah, that's just kind of where I know Alex from. So Alex, if you want to give a little bit about your competitive history and then what you've done since then for everybody, that would be really cool.
Yeah, hey guys. As Joe was saying, I'm primarily known from being online on most of the forums, and you were saying the GH15 forums in the golden days. Well, I was in the golden days of pretty much any bodybuilding forum since I'm old enough, at 40 years old. So I started out on, Chad Nichols had a board. I don't know when it ended or why it ended, but it was called Muscle Media 2000 or Muscle Mayhem 2000, I think it was. And back then, it was like myself and Fuad Abiad or Abiod, I don't know how to say his name. Fuad and a guy named Joe, who was also a pro in Canada, Silverback. A number of Chad's guys were on there. So this is like 1999, 2000, that forum. And then that kind of folded up. I'm not sure if Chad got some heat, but whatever happened, he folded up, and Get Big was the only forum after that. So, yeah, I primarily learned bodybuilding from forums and trying to pick people apart. And then other than that, I was in New York, living in New York for 10 years, and a lot of their gyms were busy with pros at the time, but they never really talked to you, so you didn't get much info from people directly, and there were no coaches at the time, so it was just a matter of trying to piece things together and figure it out as you went along. So,
cool.
Go ahead.
How about your own competitive bodybuilding history, if you just break that down?
Yeah. So I tell a lot of my clients this because people have a hard time sometimes with their first couple preps, knowing if they're ready or what's going on with their prep. And of course they get to trust me or their own coach to do, to tell them if they're, doing well or on track. But at the time, I actually prepped for like 3 or 4 shows and didn't compete. I went and sat in the audience and watched the show and didn't go and sign up because I wasn't sure if I was ready. And that was when I was 20, 21 years old. So I'd prep for the entire year. I'd be sitting in my little purple trunks all tanned up, and I'd walk to the venue and not sign up and then just watch the show. And pretty much every time was like, I wish I did it, but I hadn't done it. And then when I was 23, I jumped into the New York Metropolitans in the novice category and took second as a middleweight to Ulysses of Muscle Mania fame, the dude with like 8 abs or 12 abs or how many ever abs there were. I looked over and just saw a wall of abs, and I knew I was second. So that was my first show. My second show was the year after I did the Atlantic States and did not place. I was in really good shape about a week out, and I actually was completely ready to compete. And I hadn't had very many carbs for about 6 weeks. I want to say I'd pretty much eaten fish and green beans or broccoli for about 6 weeks. And I started adding carbs back in and went crazy and thought I was going to be Mr. Olympia. It was pretty crazy. And then, unfortunately, somebody gave me Lasix, and I had not been drinking since about Thursday, because back then you just stopped drinking on Wednesday or Thursday and didn't, tried to make it through Saturday. And somebody gave me a Lasix, and I ended up dropping about 11 pounds the night before the show, completely disappeared. And that was a bad showing. So then my next show was I think it was the Diamond gym show in Jersey. 2 weeks later, I won the middleweights there. And then I came back the next year and did the Atlantic States again, taking second. And shortly after that, I tore my pec. So that was pretty much the heyday of my competitive career. I remember thinking, oh, I'm washed up and I'm 24. After rehabbing the pec kind of half-heartedly, I tore my quad the same year. So I was pretty much sidelined after that. And, pulled out of bodybuilding almost entirely. I did at one point hire Dave Palumbo and tried to come back, but it didn't pan out for me at all. I did not like the keto diet. I did not have a good time with it. And I ended up moving to Colorado and completely stopped lifting. Was playing basketball and, doing mountain sports for a year or so before I moved back to Massachusetts when I was 30. And that's when I found beautiful HGH and kind of started rehabbing and getting back towards the stage. But my modern, I guess you could call, contest history is I did in 2011, I think it was. I came back, got second at the New England's in the middleweights. 2 years later, I came in and got third, which I believe I should have won that show. It was a new set of judges from a new gym, and the two guys who placed ahead of me were, I thought, were not very close to me. I was quite a bit bigger and felt I got shafted, and they were from that gym. So that was the only time in my career I can say that I think politics affected me. So I took third in that show. And then after that, I took several years off. In 2015, I went to Louisiana and I competed, getting second again. I wasn't really happy with my physique on stage, but it was actually my best prep since I was young. The best look I had achieved going into that show. And then the last show that I've done is 2017. I did the New England's, and I did not place. I was very, very close to not making weight, and didn't have a chance to. I didn't prep very well, but I didn't have a chance to peak very well because of not being able to eat for several days, and it was a bad choice to try to make weight. I should have just stuck to the higher weight class, but came in pretty flat. And that year was 19 or 20 bodybuilders in my class, and there were the top, 3 or 4 people from that show went pro that year, and I just wasn't anywhere near my peak and not competitive. So I haven't competed since, and I've actually looked back at that thinking if I ever do compete again, I'm going to be a whole lot more prepared than I ever was there. So that's my competitive history. A bunch of seconds and thirds, a couple of wins, a couple of do not place.
Sweet. That's really cool. Thanks for the breakdown. I kind of always saw you as a guy with a ton of experience that's worked with so many people. So I think that would be a good thing to go over today, especially from an experience aspect of how you like to work with clients specifically. I know there's not going to be any one particular dogmatic thing that you like to do, but
right.
Something interesting I've seen from you quite a few times is the ability to guess almost to the pound where your client's going to come in on stage. Which was always pretty crazy.
That started when I was really young. I like to pick out bodybuilders. I was actually able to pick out the 1998 Olympia top 6 3 months before the show. I called Ronnie winning it, and before anyone gave him any shot. And after the New York Pro when he won it, I just saw it. So I have this kind of weird ability to see things kind of clearly as when I look at a physique, I guess, ahead of time. And part of that is to see where they're going to land weight-wise. So a lot of times I'll have a guy that's, 190 pounds, 10 weeks out, and I can tell him, yeah, we're gonna come in at right around 172. You're gonna be fine, making weight, no problem. And they're like, oh, I've never been that low. And I'm like, well, that's where you're gonna land. Just recently, I've got a guy who's a super heavyweight going on stage this weekend, and we got to about 290 off season, and I looked at him and said, when we were about 4 weeks into prepping, I looked at him and said, yeah, you'll be 252. And he's 250.8 this morning as we start our carb up. So I think I'm pretty close. It's just something I've always been able to do. I kind of can look through the fat and see what's left.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's who I was following. Might be someone on the boards called like Freak or something like that. I don't know if we're talking about him.
He's not even on the boards, this guy, but
okay.
Other people have mentioned that before. It's funny. It's I don't know what made me think of this, but I remember one time I was reading a Boston Lloyd post, and I messaged him. It was one of the only times I've spoken to him, but I messaged him about a particular coach, and I'm not going to name the coach, but he said, yeah, he has no touch. He's got all the scientific knowledge, but he has no touch.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought of that a lot going forward. That was about a year ago, but I've thought about that a lot, and I think that maybe what gives me a little bit of an edge over some people is having a touch as to when to change things or seeing things clearly, which can be a huge, you look at somebody like Chris Aceto, and
Yeah, I was
they
just
almost
about
don't
to say that, like the Aceto effect.
Well, I mean, I'm not comparing myself to Chris Aceto in any way, but excuse me, he will make almost entirely dietary changes and do nothing with drugs for 12 weeks or 16 weeks. And his dietary changes seem like they're so minute, but a lot of times the physiques come in right on point. And what that is a touch with the ability to, change diet, change activity levels, and get things kind of accurate that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of lost in a lot of the preps. I think a lot of times, and I've been guilty of it in the past when I've overthought things, I just kind of keep adding and adding, layering problems over problems. Like just add a fat burner, add a, thyroid support, add more cardio, add this, add that. And a lot of times the answer is to subtract or sometimes even do nothing. Mm-hmm. And do nothing drives clients crazy. They don't like to hear change nothing.
No, that's the best. That's the best response you can get, though, in my opinion, to like a check-in. If you tell them to change nothing, it's the best.
It's a great response. It's it's like, hey, actually, I just started with a girl that I've had before. We got close to the stage, and she has some eating disorder issues, and had to drop out last time. And she came back to me, and we're a week into the program, and she's 5 pounds down, and she said, "Okay, what do I change?" And I go, well, "Why would you change anything? Well, what would you need to change at this point?" Well, I figured you'd add some cardio or something. No, there's no reason. There's no reason to change anything until you're seeing some sort of a stagnation. So, but people don't like to hear that. They want to think that they're buying something, and that something is a change from what they would be doing. But there's selling somebody a plan is useless. It's never going to amount to much of anything. It might be it's like going on a road trip, and the first sign says go that way, and that's, you go that way for how long? Well, I don't know. I'm not going to give you that information. Just go that way. That's what a diet plan is. What a coach is a map to continually take the correct turns and, stop for gas over here. You're going to need it because there's no more gas for 40 miles, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. It's funny because a response I give people a lot of the time is, or how long are we doing this? Or what do we do now? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you, and I tell people that too, maybe they're not necessarily working with me. They're working with somebody else. And I'm like, hey, if they're mapping out 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks or whatever, that's to me is a big red flag right off the bat.
Yeah, that's problematic.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, like you said, you said that the touch gives you a slight advantage. I would probably argue that gives you a huge advantage. I'm
being modest.
Yeah. No, I understand for sure. I mean, it's a hard art. It's kind of an art to master. Yeah. I mean, you have to, and I think that when we kind of got into the more science-based crowd, it kind of got lost a little bit with a lot of people. But not always. I mean, people that combine both science and anecdotal evidence and have the eye, I mean, that's obviously a great combination, but it's just a lot of people that are coming up are just not like that. That's how it is.
It's very difficult to know the science, apply the science, and then be able to ignore it where you need to. And so like I do a lot of reading. I'll be all over, like I was all over DAT's forum when it was up, and that be true, and a lot of forums that are like that. And that's why I stay close to forums, even though I'm getting older and I don't really have the time to be sitting and posting all the time, and having the camaraderie that the forums used to be for me isn't really where I'm at now. But I still try to get in there and read what's going on and kind of keep the pulse of the science that's happening, because I don't want to get left behind. But at the same time, I just see all these people that don't have the physical ability or the genes to do the things that they're doing. And I just think, they'd be better off if they covered the bases first. And, that's kind of where I start with everybody. It's you're not going to get my attention about a new drug or putting in, some methylated new oral drug that I have no interest in, unless you can stick to a diet for like at least 3 days, So I have a very short fuse for people that don't want to put in the hard, simple work. I listened to one of your guys' podcasts. You were talking about training, and I think it was Joe that mentioned that a lot of people don't know where failure is for them, or they don't really know where, like, how hard they can push themselves, or their idea of what failure is not the same as what somebody else's might be. And I think that's really pertinent, because like you'll get somebody that's training and they'll tell you they're training incredibly hard. You can give them a program and it says fail at this amount of reps and do this kind of a rep cadence, and this is where you should be doing it. And if you see a video of it, you're like, that's not what I was saying at all. You're fucking around with the weights there, and then you stop like 6 reps short of failure. You're toying with that weight, and I see it all the time, and it's insane that people could be training that poorly. And you imagine they're not eating that well if they're not, they say, oh, just give me macros, I can handle the food. And I just, I pull up, I'm like, I'm sure you can, but maybe no, you can't, because, your training was horrible. So your diet's probably not exactly great. And if you did those 2 things first with like some test, you'd probably be better off than all of this other stuff you're doing and giving dick all effort in the gym and eating canned processed food and not having anything nutritious. Like, your micronutrient profile is just shit, and you're not paying any attention to nutrient timing or anything like that. So I know I'm going to get shit on by some people that think that a calorie is a calorie and all that, but I just don't ascribe to it at all. I think there's always a better way, a more optimal way. So that's what I seek for. And it's usually a very simple path, but not a fun one and not an easy one to perform. So that's kind of I guess if I did have a philosophy, it's like, do the shitty work, get in there and do it. So.
Yeah, I like that. Doing the basics well before.
Yeah. Do them really well. Take pride in doing them really well. That's,
Yeah.
So,
it's like, don't add bands and chains to an exercise that you can't execute properly to begin with. I mean, the little things,
Yeah, and I think that that applies to like the way people eat and the way people drug too, the way they supplement. I think that's kind of part and parcel of how they think about, performing a task as a whole. So, certainly I'm not trying to downplay the importance of drugs. Like, obviously at a certain level, there's going to be a lot of them. But I just don't, and also it's also probably important to point out that people, when they're growing and they're young, probably do need a bit more than when they're older and they're already big, in terms of stimulus from training and from drugs and all of the above, and more food and all of that. Like, you see John Meadows and Shelby and all these other guys saying, oh, I just can't really get small now. I'm just, I'm on a thimble of testosterone every fortnight. That's all I do, and you're like, okay, well, that's crazy because you're just a freak. Well, they didn't get to be a freak doing that,
I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, Matt Porter didn't become a freak. Well,
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know who's listening, but
Matt was a great example. I mean, not to get off on that rant, but Matt was very honest though, because he did specifically state when he came back and got his hormones fixed and everything, he's like, "Hey guys, you do realize that I had all this muscle to begin with."
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's not like this isn't new muscle.
Right.
It's yeah. I think that whole thing's hilarious that people think that.
But just the fact that he can maintain it. You know how many people just continually blast because they're afraid of losing it?
Right.
So the other episode that I listened to that you had was with Shelby, and Shelby's kind of an interesting character to me. I've never really paid a whole lot of attention to him, but every time I see him write something, I go, "Yep," you know, like that's right. That's exactly it. So he's one of those people that I tend to give a lot of credence, even though I haven't really followed him in depth on forums or elsewhere. But every time I see a post from him, it's there. So I listened to the one with him that you guys were talking to him, and the level of execution that he has on this diet when he's quitting bodybuilding is pretty intense, right? So that's kind of what I'm talking about there. Like the people like Matt and Shelby and all those guys and Meadows, and they're not doing a whole lot wrong with their diet. You know, they're getting it pretty much spot on, and their training is probably incredibly efficient. They're not wasting a lot of time or effort doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. And that's why they're using, and they've already carrying the muscle mass, but that's why they're able to use less drugs. And I think it's kind of I find it funny that I'm like pounding the less drugs angle, but it's kind of where I've landed, because, I did get chastised recently on the forums for having given, one competitor his first cycle. I gave him, I can't remember the exact dosages, but it amounted to 15 or 1600 milligrams of gear between test and deca. And looking back, I would not have done that, but he kind of blasted me and said, like, "This is your bullshit cycle that you wrote." And I go, "You know what, man? I did. You're right. That was in the middle of my GH15 heyday when I look back and everybody was blasting them, 1200 to 1500 milligrams of tren. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't get over a gram before I felt sick. So I wouldn't really put people on that much, but it was still like, the stuff that I used to give people. I look back at my vlogs and I'll go, "Oh my God, that's like so unnecessary." So, nowadays it's pretty straightforward. And I know, Joe, you and I have gone back and forth about the test deck thing.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit then. Because,
yeah, sure.
I suppose this is like a gross oversimplification, but maybe the evidence science-based crowd now are more favourable of running lower testosterone stacks and making use of higher anabolic rating drugs with greater androgen binding, but maybe less androgenic and less aromatizing compounds. But you still quite like running that higher testosterone anchor for most people, from what I've seen. So talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. So I've got I would say I've got right now I'm working with, I haven't counted, but it's 45 to 55 people. And out of those 45 to 55, I can think of 3 that I have on nandrolone at all. Which is funny because you probably have everybody on nandrolone. Or most everybody.
Not necessarily. No, not really.
No. So, the reason I shy away from it is because
I do like nandrolone, though. I'm going to put that out there. I do see it as a really effective anabolic with a fairly high binding affinity, if that means anything, judging by light of new research. Generally low side effect, low aromatizing, no DHT. But some people suffer the estrogenic effects that aren't mediated via like the aromatase enzyme. So I use testosterone, but one thing I don't really actively use in anybody is aromatase inhibitors. That's the only thing that nobody runs, but that's not to say that none of my clients don't run higher test anchored stacks, because some of them do and some of them get on really well with it.
So here's my general feeling on it. I agree with you. I don't like to use AIs as long as possible. I'll use them in prep, obviously, closer to a show. They get in there. But even now, I'm shying away from using letrozole. I'm using Arimidex almost entirely towards the end of prep, and I'm using it at quite a lower dose than I used to. And I'm finding people don't flatten quite as much, and they look much better. And also their post-show rebound is much, much better, and their health markers much better quicker after the show. But I don't like to use AIs as much as possible. And you say, how's that possible if you're using 1,500 milligrams of test? And my answer is you're lean and you keep your diet tight, and a lot of times you don't need them. But there will be times maybe that you do. And in that case, I tend to go towards aromacin and, having something that you can do a single dose and see if it has a reaction. For some people, I've used raloxifene with some success. I've even used Rad 140, the SARM, as a decent aromatase inhibitor. It works. It does the job for people that don't have a massive problem. And then some other people do have, more of a need. But I find it's usually the younger people with some sort of pubescent gyno that have those issues. But as a whole, I'll run test as a base, and I start people typically around 600 milligrams, and we'll go up to 2 grams for the people that have pro aspirations with some serious body mass. We'll go as high as 2 grams. And that's not as high as I've heard people doing, but it is certainly higher than most people do. And then I've got a few people that are very lean types that don't hold a lot of water weight at all, and I'll put them on some nandrolone as support, mostly for joint support, and I'll start it low, 300 or 400 milligrams, and I probably don't go over 600 to 800 at most ever. And it's just a personal preference. I like the way they look. I like the way I can control other factors. I like to use insulin, and I like to use HGH for certain training cycles where we do a lot of pump work. And then I like to use androgens as a counter to those to do progressive overload cycles. So I tend to pulse both back and forth, watching blood glucose and other markers. And, so there is a fair bit of science to what I'm doing, but I don't know that it follows what everybody's scientific, the scientific community is, the directions they're all going. I'm not sure, but I'm just trying to keep people with a low blood glucose and, change the stimulus and the way they're approaching training so that, you can't do progressive overload properly for more than, 10 or 12 weeks without falling apart. So after that period of time, I like to get more food in with sugars and stuff around training, get more insulin in there, and to do a lot more volume work and pump work to get, gives a little bit of a break off the joints to not do quite as heavy work. And then I'll do sort of a deload and give people every other day training for a little bit of time and give them a break. Cruise doses. For me, cruise doses can be as low as 100 milligrams a week, 112 milligrams, something like that a week. And I'll do that as long as necessary. Do blood work a few times a year. So it's I think nowadays people are pretty savvy to stuff. They're taking blood pressure, they're taking their blood work, they're watching what's going on. But when I was coming up, I had no idea. Nobody told me anything. I went into the doctor one time with my blood pressure at 150 over 95, and he was like, "Yeah, that's not good." I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks." And totally ignored it. Went home and was like, "Whatever," no idea. I was 25 years old, 26 years old, whatever it was, no idea. So, but nobody, I trained next to Rich Gaspari and a bunch of other guys, Max Charles. I don't think Max Charles has ever taken his blood pressure in his life. I bet if you asked him, he probably never has. Max is one of the nicest guys in the world. One of the nicest dudes. I trained next to Max when I was 24 years old. He walked in the gym the first time I ever saw him in his Carhartt boots and hoodie, and started doing pull-ups with like 6 plates attached to him on a weight belt, just strong as an ox. I'm watching him and I'm like, so I go over to him and, at the time you want to know what people are doing and nobody's talking about it. So I'm like, "Hey man, what are you taking?" I just asked him and he was like, "I don't know what you're talking about," So I see him like every once in a while for like a few months, and then he turns pro like 10, 15 years later, right? And I don't know who he is. I don't remember him by his name. And I'm looking at his pictures, and I'm like, I know this guy. And so I messaged him, and I'm like, dude, did you ever go to this gym, that gym? And he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, okay, so about this year? He's like, yeah. I was like, I thought, like, when I saw him, I thought he was 30 years old. Like, you know, when I was 20 years old, 24 years old, I thought he was older than me by, like, a good margin. And I go, well, how old are you? And he's like, oh, I'm 35. And I'm like, I'm 40. I'm like, wait, how old are you then? He's like, I was in high school. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. So, you know, Max is just one of those guys, like a lot of the pros are, that were just freaks. He was just a freak. But, you know, from there on, I don't think he's ever taken an inject anywhere but his shoulder and his triceps, and I think he's like just probably never looked at anything and just kept going and going and going. And that's kind of how we did things in New York back then. It was like, well, what do you have in that bag? Oh, a bunch of that stuff. Okay, give me it, you know, and you just take it. Like, that was how we figured it out. And it was like, well, does Durotestins make you fat? You know, like, you don't know. You know, the Omnidrins, those make you puffy. You know, so there was none of what we have now. People are very incredibly lucky now coming up. They know what to avoid. They know, you know, more or less how to do things safely. You know, back then there was a guy with a trash bag showed up to your house and was like, hey, I have a bunch of stuff. I was like, okay, this one's water-based. I'm like, okay, you know, so it's a different world now, thankfully.
Okay, cool. So to reel that kind of back then, so during like growth phases or off season, you like to sort of cycle in growth hormone and insulin. Do you like to periodize that with maybe like orals interspersed, maybe 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off kind of thing? That's something I've seen quite often.
Yeah, I like to avoid orals as much as possible. I don't use
contest prep kind of with orals.
So my off season is pretty simple with regards. I mean, it's less simple because I'm switching around, you know, insulin use and HGH use, and I might use test with some suspension, and you know, I might put in like Trestolone or something like that when I'm going the other direction into androgens. I very rarely use Trenbolone off season with anybody anymore. I very rarely use orals other than maybe Anadrol, although I will do a burst of Halo for some people if we're trying to, you know, push PRs in a progressive overload phase for a brief period. I'll use it. And, you know, some people have like a really, really good reaction to Trestolone, so they become very euphoric and their off season goes very smooth. So I'll do that for those people, but other people feel sick on it and I just avoid it. So the basis for me is just testosterone with usually one anabolic. If we're going to do an anabolic, it'll be something like Primobolan usually. And I'll use Masteron for some people in low dose, you know, even off season. So I'll keep it in there. I like to keep the free test high. I like to, you know, I feel like it kind of activates the testosterone, if that makes any sense.
What sort of dose do you like the Masteron in?
Yeah, I do like it in there.
Well, what dose?
300 milligrams, 300 to 400 milligrams. Not very high. I'm not doing a gram of mass. I'm not doing that stuff, you know. Like,
that could possibly be balancing out some of the androgen to estrogen kind of modulation with your higher testosterone stacks as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'd prefer to use that than have a monorainbow Dex the whole year.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like the guy that I've got, the 250-pound guy coming into the show right now, his basic, like, coming into the show the last 4 weeks, his basics are like 100 milligrams of prop with 75 milligrams of suspension a day. Trenbolone, I had him at 500 milligrams a week, and that was the max that we did. I think we might have done 700 for 1 week. I don't even think we did, actually. I think we kept it at 75 every day. Masteron was about there. I bumped it up to 100 a day for the last 4 weeks. And then the last few weeks I put in Winstrol and Halo, and we didn't use any other orals throughout the prep. We didn't use any Anadrol. We didn't use any, you know, anything else really. We kept insulin in almost the last, you know, couple weeks, and we only use it now when he's refeeding, but we actually kept it in the entire way, which I know a lot of people don't do.
I do that more so in the latter of last year and this year's preps with clients, and it's pretty much a mainstay for me now.
So if I have somebody all year and I can get their carbs up to 800, 900, 1,000 grams a day in the off season, then during the prep period, I can usually keep the insulin in. So that's what we did with his. We had him at 450 grams of protein and about 1,000 carbs a day, and his fats were 150 to 160 during the off season, and then
that's some intake.
Yeah, and then, well, he's a big dude. He's a 290-pound guy. And then we started to pull carbs out first, got him down to about 800, and then I pulled the fat down to about 100. And from there, we basically stayed there until 6 weeks out, and then I started pulling carbs. I was just adding, he does sanitation work, so he was, that's quite a bit of running around, and the cardio wasn't really as high as some people I'd have them doing. But we did 20 to 30 minutes a few times a week, and then I just start to kind of pulse. And that's where the touch comes in. I'd kind of tell them when to pull the cardio out, when to put more in. And when you have somebody that goes, I feel like death, and I look at the pictures, I go, hey, you look fine, do an extra 25 minutes of cardio. He'd just be like, okay, instead of being like, this sucks, I don't want to do it. He just does it. And, okay. Or he'll give me the smiley face and a thumbs up, and I'm like, that's the right answer.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Yep, that's the
ability.
Right answer. So.
Me and Austin talk about it all the time. When you get a client that just is almost switched off to it and just does it, no stress, just lets it work.
He tells me, a few times, I don't feel very well, and I go, well, are you sick? He goes, no, I'm just very tired. And I go, okay, well, let's take a day off of cardio and tell me how you feel in the morning. And the next day, he's like, I'm fine. So, those are usually the guys that are pretty resilient and can handle it. And they get down to very lean body weight, body fat levels, and they can tolerate it without, going nuts, because it sucks. It's not how much you're eating. It's your body. You could be eating a ton. Like the lowest we got on his diet was 325 grams of carbs a day, the lowest he got, but he felt like it was 0. He felt like it was negative 100, so his body's telling him it's nothing. So
yeah, it feels the same. I mean, you see that often, almost the brag, like, I'm still eating X amount and I'm this lean, but getting lean, it feels the same. It feels the same.
No, it feels the same.
Yeah.
It does. It's not a brag. It's just, the story behind him was the 2 years ago, I had one of his best friends as a client that I also coach, who's also super heavy, just wiped the floor with him. And, my guy prepped for 10 weeks. I knew his body pretty well, even though he looks like kind of soft off season. I was like, 10-week prep, we're good. He came in and did really well, and beat this guy. And then he went to him and he said, you need to hire my coach if you want to, level up, because I remember looking at his prep and saying, I see this guy putting up stories of doing keto, like 13 weeks out, he's on keto and he's already lean enough to be like, blasting insulin and eating, like, turn it around, buddy. You're fine. You come in like 20 pounds heavier and be ready. But he was going the wrong direction, and he ended up coming on stage at 230 pounds, and my guy was 238 or 240 pounds and beat him pretty badly. And so then he hired me, and really all I've done is simplify everything and give him more food and, put him on a more sane, dietary intake year round. Because before he was just trying to get up to 300 pounds and eat anything he could, and then he would just keto diet it off, and that's no way to go about it. You're never going to retain anything doing it that way.
Yeah, so digging into that kind of stuff, tell us a little bit about if you have any like nutrition strategies that you particularly like to implement off the bat, maybe nutrient timing or anything you like to bring in for clients as a general. I know it's hard to speak about every client as a general, but are there certain things that you avoid or certain things that you like to do more so?
You mean with like a new client?
Yeah.
So the first thing I try to figure out is if this person's overeating or undereating when they get to me. And I would say the vast majority of people undereat, and then they eat. They'll undereat on a daily basis, and then they'll binge eat, calling it cheat meals, or, they think they're refilling their glycogen stores with their cheat meals, but what they're really doing is undereating all week. and then eating junk food, and their activity levels don't really reflect the food they're eating. They're just kind of winging it. So the first thing I try to do is to get people to eat more. It sounds counterintuitive, but to be able to get them to eat more but be leaner. So if somebody's fat coming to me, we'll strip the body fat off. But if the only time it's really hard and you really earn your money as a coach is when they come to you eating 17 or 1,800 calories daily and they're fat, or 19, or they think they are. Very often they're eating an average of 3,000, but they don't know it because they've got Waffle House on Sunday and they got beer on Thursday or whatever it is with their boys and wings, and like they're balancing it out with these like 8,000 calorie days. And I just try to even the ship by having the nutrient intake be the same every day for at least a period of time where they, if you can't handle doing 2 weeks without going to Waffle House and doing your binge out thing, if you can't just like give me the opportunity to try to figure out where you need to be calorically, then you're not going to be able to be coached anyway. It's just not going to happen. So the first thing I do is try to get people on an even, like I'm not trying to, do low carb, high carb or anything like that. I just want to figure out what they need to be eating. So I'll typically stick to, and that also comes with like, how hard do I think they train? If I think they're very hard trainers, then I'll bump their protein up a little higher. I'll go to like 1.25 per pound, per lean pound. So like if somebody's fat, I'll try to figure out what they weigh as a lean person and go 1.25, and then I'll base that. And then I tend to go with carbs next and then lower the fats initially. And then once I get a hold on it, I'll start to increase the fats and, do more nutrient timing around where they're training and figuring out how much they need for that. I think a lot of people eat way too much around training all the time. They try to think like, oh, I need to like do an intra workout and gummy bears before I train. And then after I eat, I'm going to have a shake with 100 grams of, Vitargo in it or whatever, HBCD. And they do that every day all year. And so their glycogen stores are never really repleted when they're doing that all the time. So they're not really like, they're not getting any sort of a real insulin pump out of that, because they're already full. Their stores are already full.
Right.
So I guess it's just all trying to figure that out, just trying to figure out what they're doing now and making it, more logical. Once we've gotten into things for a while, then my goal is to get them eating as much as humanly possible, and then training. Like, I really focus on the training and trying to get them to like be an animal in the gym. That's what I would say. Like I'm successful maybe 30% of the time. The rest of the time, I think everybody trains like really, really like poorly and without a whole lot of effort. But the people that do, they really do. And you're able to get their food way up. And those are the ones that get you clients because they look crazy the next year and everyone goes, oh, what'd you do with them? Oh, stuff you're not going to want to do. More or less.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the cheat meal thing or the weekend thing, because I don't know how many times I've had clients that they say, oh, I'm doing a free meal, or God forbid they call it a refeed when really it's just they're eating like a dickhead. And
yeah.
I'm like, and I start them, get their macro set up, get their plan, everything distributed. And I send it to them and they're like, well, you're having me eat more than I was before. And I'm like, no. Your overall weekly caloric intake is going to be way lower because we're taking out your whole weekend binge episode. And sure enough, now they eat time and a half or double what they were eating during the week. They feel better. And they're not binging on the weekend too, because they just don't have those cravings. Their satiety signals, everything's more level. Mm-hmm. That happens all the time, man.
So like my own downfall as a bodybuilder is because I eat. I know an asshole when I see one because I am one. I eat like an asshole. So when somebody's like, oh, I have the refeed meal on this, I'm like, dude, it's called brunch. You had it with your family, and I did the same thing. I do it every weekend. So it's the reason why I haven't excelled as a bodybuilder the way I ever wanted to, was because The last time I had a real off season, I was 24 years old, and that was before I tore my pec. And then every year since then, it's just eat a bunch of shit and go to the gym a little bit, and then when I get disgusted with myself, it's time to prep. And I think a lot more people than we realize kind of go about it that way. They say they're off season or they're bulking or whatever, but what they're really doing is just eating poorly and training without any real purpose. Because the truth is when you're not eating well, you don't really have that drive, to put the work in. You're just kind of like going at it. You might be strong here and there, but you're not really you're not goal oriented. So I know what that's like. I know that you can still achieve a fair amount and put on muscle and get better doing it that way. But I also know that if you want to optimize and be like the best possible version of yourself, that you're cheating yourself doing it that way. So I am definitely don't follow what I'm doing necessarily. I know I'm eating Cheetos right now. I see that, but you shouldn't. So that Shelby Starnes episode really kind of hurt me. I did pick up some pomegranate juice. I was like, I'm going to try this pomegranate juice thing, and maybe I'll start doing the Shelby diet. But so far, I just drink pomegranate juice and then just eat a bunch of stuff all day. So.
Man, I am the opposite of that.
I don't know. I don't know about Joe, but I know I get a lot of those clients that they only want to work with me for contest prep, and then they come to me for prep and they have these goals for the show. I'm like, look, I'm going to get you in shape, but you're going to look exactly the fucking same as you did last year and the year before that.
Yeah.
Yep. Before that, they're so frustrated. I'm like, I'm not. This isn't a miracle.
You might get bigger and better because you might get a little bit because you are using some drugs and you are training pretty hard here and there. I'm not saying that people are completely suck at bodybuilding when they do it this way, but they're, like you said, if they're not they're not treating the off season like a prep, with structure and with the effort that they are with a prep, then they're not going to beat anybody worth noticing, and they're not going to be their best in the long run by any stretch. The guys that I have, I mean, it's like, you say, they're like, oh, you're just saying that as a coach because you want to have people year round. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I do want to have people year round, but look at them. They're outpacing everybody, it's, and the ones that compete, the ones that continually compete, keep outpacing people, not the ones that compete every show, but 18 months, every 18 months, they're doing a show. They're outpacing everybody because going through that cycle of stripping off everything down and then building it back up with a purpose, is extremely effective. It's the only way to get better at bodybuilding is to bodybuild, just to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, the longer that you stay with a coach, ultimately, the better the experience is going to get as well. I can't even compare the clients that I get to run through a proper growth phase into a contest prep compared to the clients that I literally just prep.
It's night and day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'm sure you get that question too. It's like, well, how far out should I come to you? I'm like, well, come to me before the prep. Don't come to me if you need a prep for 16, 20 weeks, whatever. How about come to me a few months out or just work with me all the time? I mean, obviously that's what we want, but it's don't come to me right when the prep's about to start.
I'm just honest. I'm like, well, you're spending more money on bullshit now. You should just hire me now. Well, I'm 2 years out. Well, great. Let's do it. In 2 years from now, I'll have you be an absolute monster. Well, yeah. Well, so what you're telling me is that you want to spin your wheels for a year and a half and then, you want to do it your way and learn things. Well, what you're really saying is you don't want to put the work in, the extreme amount of work that I'm going to make you do. That's all you're really saying. It's like, I don't want to hold myself that accountable. And then there's a cost, consideration, but for what I'm charging, it's not very, it's not a huge amount of money. So I'm not $400 a month, so it's my rates are basically $150 a month. And if you pay for a year, it's $100 a month. So, it's not like a crazy amount of money. Most people pay more on random stuff. Starbucks. Yeah. Maybe not quite, but small things.
Yeah.
For sure, you can
I'll probably
take
spend
small
that on
things
Diet
out.
Coke at the minute.
Yeah, yeah. Like I would be ashamed to try to figure out what I spend on diner breakfasts.
Every time I go out to do cardio at the minute, I make an excuse because I'm going by steps, wear a Fitbit, and I go, oh, yeah, I'm going to walk to that newsagent's like 3 miles away so I can buy that peach Diet Coke.
They make a peach Diet Coke?
Yeah, it's just come out over here. Peach and mango Diet Coke over here. It's nice.
I have a problem with soda where I just go like soda crazy. So
I've had 3 today.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the seltzer thing. My wife doesn't like me drinking soda at all.
Why?
I don't know. There's some study will come out saying it, has problematic on your kidneys or whatever, and I just go, the truth of the matter is I don't really know. And while I don't agree that there's going to be like massive impact, it's like the truth is there could be an impact. And do I really need it that bad that I need to drink 6 of them? Not really. I'll have one here and there with a meal. Yeah, no, I feel you. I do once I have 1 or 2, then I definitely do need 6. Like we, my partner and I we have a screen print shop and a clothing business that we run, and once we start drinking them, it's like we just rip through 12 packs. Just like ripping through them. So
I try not to when I go shopping, like on a big shop. I purposely won't buy a multi-pack of Coke because I'll sit there and drink it for the whole day, and then I'm about 400 milligrams of caffeine down. And,
yeah.
As long as I come back with one for the missus, it's all right.
That's definitely the caffeine consideration is definitely there. I think a lot of people way overconsume caffeine.
Oh yeah, I do at the minute. That's for sure. I need to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna de-stim soon.
Well, I don't know what else people want to know about me necessarily.
Quickly, with the little bit of time that we've got left, training, because you touched on it and you say you like to train hard and whatnot. From what I've seen of yours, correct me if I'm wrong, you're quite into like the single body part, progressive overload, lower volume type stuff. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, I think you might be wrong in saying that, but I also think that there's so
I think that's what I've seen the Tyrannosaurus.
Yes. You have. Doing. Okay, so I'll clarify there. I was always a volume type train. Actually, after I tore my chest and quads, I was not able to train with max weights anymore, and I never have been able to since then. So I went to the academy of MTUT at that point, where I tried to figure out every possible rep cadence and rep range and amount of volume possible to build muscle without, truly stressing max weights and progressive overload. And I went 10 years believing that you could grow with equal, you could grow at an equal pace to somebody that was doing progressive overload. And then it was kind of a light bulb two years ago or so where I went, why am I not doing both? Why am I not with my clients doing both? Like, I'm not able to bench press anymore. I can't squat max weights anymore. Like, I'll fall apart. But somebody that's young and coming up like Tyrannosaurus is, one of the main things I did with him, other than, some dietary changes that we had, was to kind of simplify his training. He was doing a lot of volume, a lot of unilateral work. And I just put more compound work in and gave him goals. Started with progressive overload, where we said, okay, here's a movement for back, here's a movement for legs, and here's a movement for chest, where I want to see quantitative improvements over the course of 9 weeks. I want to see either more reps or more weight being used progressively throughout that time frame. And it wasn't for every movement, but it was a movement per body part. And then we set up the training around that movement in order to facilitate the improvement there. So of course you can kind of go, well, technique alone could solve that. So we tried to take away the technique angle by making the movement not be first, and a lot of times be not super explosive. So it's a kind of a difficult way of looking at it, but it's a progressive overload with checks and balances, and then after that phase, I'll go into volume work, which is what I've done a lot more of. So to say that I'm all about lower volume is not true. But what I do think is true is I would not waste any sets anymore. I don't have any sets where it's like, well, this one, like if you look at it like objectively, if you're doing 4 sets or 5 sets of a movement, there's probably 2 of them where you really didn't do a whole lot of anything. You know, you kind of just warmed up in the middle of between this one and that one, and you didn't go to failure, and you got a little bit of a pump going on, but really all you're doing is fatiguing, you know, burning glycogen and fatiguing, but you're not really pushing anything. So I try to take away that stuff. And I have a client right now, a female client, a figure client. We won her last show we won. We didn't quite win the overall. Now we're going to do nationals this year. And she's one of those people that will just kind of yell at you if you tell her she's not really trying. You're not really going to failure here. She'll just kind of go crazy on you and be like, I'm training harder than everybody, this and that. And then I watch it and I go, oh, wow, you just wasted, like, I just saw you waste 3 sets, completely waste them. Like, you didn't need it. You're warmed up. You could have just went right for it. And the reason people don't want to do that all-out set is because it sucks. You know, nobody wants to do a leg press set to real failure. It sucks. It's really hard to do. So, you know, loading up the thing and getting 25 or 30 reps and then pulling down 2 or 3 plates and getting a few more reps and just continuing to do that until you can't do a few more reps with 2 or 3 plates is awful. Nobody really wants to do it. So they won't. They'll find a way not to. They'll do 3 more sets, you know, of 20 where they could have got 30, but they got 20 and they didn't really dig that deep. But they did 3 sets, so there's a lot of volume there, you know. So to me, I try to eliminate that stuff. You know, that's the stuff I want to eliminate. If you're trying to get a pump, do longer sets, do supersets. You know, if you're trying to get progressive overload, do the hard set. You know, dig in and do it.
Yeah.
But don't do 20 sets. Like somebody said, oh, you had 26 sets of back. No, you did like 23 sets of back. You did 3 sets of real back, and then you did 23 sets of noodle dick shit. You know, so that's kind of the way I see it. Maybe I know Jay Cutler went his whole career doing high volume stuff, and it worked fine for him. But I would contend that Jay Cutler was picking up picnic tables when he was 13 years old, and maybe he's not the same as you. You know, so he's just a bigger, different type of person than most, so you can handle different types of stresses.
Yeah, I would tend to agree that people need to learn to train with sufficient intensity. At least it's, if anything's lacking, it's intensity, not volume.
Yeah, that's basically it. I could have just said that and not said the other 5 minutes of stuff I just did.
No, for sure. I'm right on board, especially looking at client videos. Like, I'll ask a client to do something, like me and Austin spoke about it so much, where you give them some kind of AMRAP set or an RPE 9 or 10 movement, and they'll send it back and you'll be like, okay, that's why you said the training programming was so easy.
Right.
You know, getting them to hit that, you know, high threshold motor unit by actually getting that close to failure or actually to failure is another thing. Like, if people can truly train at these massive volumes, you got to sometimes ask, do they just genetically have this incredible autonomic nervous system regulation, or are they just sort of half-ass in it?
Yeah, there's a rare person that can handle it, that does a lot of work and can handle it. I've got a couple of those guys. I don't even want to train with them. They're like, hey, come out and train with me. I'm like, yeah, so I got this thing. I'm not coming. You know, because I know I'm going to get buried. Like, I just can't go. I can't go like they go. In fact, one of them, I actually have walked into the gym because I know he's still there and grabbed him and said, you're done. Let's leave. Or you're done. You know, he'll just keep going and going. I don't know how. I don't know how some of them can do that. But most people, no, that's not the case. They're just doing less intensity for longer. That's all they're doing.
Do you ever get those clients that train really hard and there's almost nothing you can do to them and they just never need to back off?
Yeah, except one of them finally tore his tricep, and I was like, yep, that's what I was talking about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and he was like, man, he came running over to my house because he's local, thankfully, and he was like, what do you think? And I'm like, you don't want to know what I really think, but more or less, I told you this was going to happen, you know. you just kept going and going and going and going and going, like just 30 sets of everything every day, no days off, that type of thing. And I'm like, you need to take days off. I've got another guy who's running out of steam now and getting small niggling injuries here and there, and he's getting up there in age, like 37, 38 years old, and I couldn't tell him more that he needs to train less. Like, you just need to, like, just train every other day, you know? And he's like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And then, you know, boop, 10 pounds, you know, goes right on, no fat. Like, okay, well, you know, some people just love to train. They love to get in there. That's not always the best thing.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Intensity, less volume, a little less time. Not quite like Mike Menser stuff, but, you know.
No, I like to do that with clients. Generally start off on like a relatively lower volume, lower frequency program, just to make sure sufficient intensity is there before we kind of periodize building in more volume on top of that. So that's always a mainstay.
Makes a lot of sense. And, you know, five days a week is probably enough for almost anybody at any phase.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know, there's no reason to be training 7 days a week, 6 days a week. You can train 6 days 1 week, but you don't need to do it every week.
Yeah, definitely. 100% agree with you there. What was I going to say?
Right.
Well, that closes us off pretty nicely, Alex. Thanks for coming on, man. That's a great insight into a experienced coach that's worked with many, many, many more people than anybody probably mine and Austin's age. So it's really cool to hear your thoughts on things that a lot of us are doing now, because we're learning from people like you anecdotally, along with like the science and evidence-based stuff that we spoke about. Me and Austin are really big on anecdote and experience as such, which is something we spoke about loads in our mentorship podcast. So yeah, it's awesome to get that back from you.
I love the mentorship one. I listened to that one. That was really good.
Thanks, man. It's working really nicely. I've taken on 2 more guys since then for mentorship, and it just works so well. It's really cool.
So it's funny because, like, I was just telling somebody, I now train every local coach, everyone that works within, like, I'd say 30 miles of me. I train all of them.
Yeah.
So it's like I have a mentorship program that I didn't even really set up on purpose.
It's awesome.
So
it's the best way, because you can't learn that stuff.
No, you can't.
In a book,
I listened to that particular episode, and I was like, oh, this is so much what I'm doing, but I'm not getting paid extra for it. That's an idea.
There you go.
Yeah, there's an idea. So,
yeah, we'll
all right, guys, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Nice one, Alex. Thank you, mate.
Yeah, so we've got metalclothingco.com, METAL clothingco.com. That'll be live this week or next week. The old site, metalgearclothing.com, is going to be down, so that's up for now. And then probably in another month or so, we'll have the Boston Tea Party, TEE party, because we're going to be making just non-lifting T-shirts for that. We have a screen printing business, and we take clients for side jobs. You can check out Metal Clothing Co. on Instagram. You can see some of the side jobs and some of the stuff we're doing. We'll start to be a lot more active in the next coming weeks, so check it out.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Alex, for coming on and joining me and Austin this week. Just going to do a little big up to our podcast sponsors. Firstly, Metaform, site enhancement product, the hyaluronic acid site enhancement based product. So if you want to look pumped up but not bloofy and swollen and a bit rubbish, and you don't want to use oil-based site enhancement, you want to keep your striations for your contest prep or whatever, go ahead and look at Metaform. It's leaps and bounds ahead of other site enhancement products, and we're proud to have the Metaform guys on board. Also compact.store for anything that you need for your competition day needs, everything from bikinis, posing shoes, jewelry, rice cakes, resistance bands, everything. And men's side is launching in the next couple of weeks. We've still got over at men's side, they've got pre-stage and the backstage essentials all set up, and the rest is coming very, very, very soon. So everything that you need for your competition day, you can buy in one single place. No need to shop around and be stressed about it. So yeah, it's all good.
There you go.
Yeah, man. So Austin, how's it going, man? Haven't caught up with you on the podcast yet.
It's going. Good week so far. Nothing, man, just every day is going so fast. Been busy, so that's good though.
That is good. It's good when you're in a prep, isn't it? Because the days are just fly by.
Oh yeah, I mean, the last thing I want to do is sit around and do nothing. I mean, I never really have that problem, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of, it's funny because the preps I've done since I've been coaching, I always tell people to pretty much have people send me updates all the way up until like the night before, just because it keeps me occupied.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, definitely. Yeah. You don't want to sit around, keep yourself busy for sure. So how about on your end? I mean, I know I talked to you. I know how it's going on your end, but nobody else does.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I'm just ticking along, just finishing off this little cut that we've been doing now. I don't know when we're going to close it off. Yeah, just keeping on. I'm looking forward to moving on to the next thing now, but, you know, this is still cool for now. Not like I'm dying or anything, you know. It's just, it is tough. Today was a day off, so fasting all day. I've had a super busy day, running around all day, so that was pretty... It was nice to sit down and have something to eat and just relax just before the podcast, because I was pretty Hank Marvin by that point. Yeah, so it'd be nice to kind of transition out of this over the next couple of weeks and get into a gaining phase, I guess, is the plan. But I'll just leave it up to you, really.
Yeah, we're close now, like we talked about. We're kind of at that just holding phase for the next, you know, week or two, and then we'll get right into it. Hold that, because I mean, this is undoubtedly the leanest you've ever been, ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
I mean.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I know you had been lean before we ever had started, but I don't know that you were this lean.
No.
Yeah.
Still no abs though. What's going on?
Well, that's why I said. So I said I want to hold it a little bit longer, see if we can get a little bit of this water off and see, because I feel that they're close. Like I want to see. I want to see at least.
I haven't got any.
You've got to be able to. Can you feel abs when you run your hand through?
No, it's just flat. It's just hard. Like I can barely grab skin there now, but it's just hard. It's just like one ab. But if I'm from the side hitting like a side relaxed, I can get pretty deep cuts along the side of my glutes. But
right,
no abs. It's weird.
Yeah, well, you're just gonna have. So the goal is we'll just have it flat, but we're gonna have to make sure it's like super vascular, so you just can't even tell. It's just fucking covered in veins, and you won't even know.
I'll put some metaform abs in there. So
yeah, you could do. You could just load up couple spots. At least you don't even need 6. Like 4 is enough.
I do 4 massive ones.
Yeah, 4 is fine.
5 metaform the night before.
You could
4 abscesses.
It would just be fucking like big cellulitis lump.
Yeah.
4 spots.
But yeah, it's all cool. So yeah, I imagine the kind of fat loss things are going to be trickling out now. Maybe not this Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, getting more into something progressive. Up the anabolics and just roll on. I wanna finish heavier than 225 this time round. That's where we ended up last time. I'm still fairly lean. I think we did pretty well. So a few things going to do differently next time, like running the insulin a little bit higher than previously. But the anabolics and growth will probably be the same. The only thing I've been toying about with in my brain is like maybe running the growth more like every day rather than 5 days, but I don't know.
We'll hammer. I think we have a general idea, and we'll hammer out the details. But ideally, you know, we get a little bit better each phase. You end a little bit leaner. You don't have to cut quite as long. You know, the cycle gets a little bit more efficient each time, to where you can just do off-season phases or whatever growth phases, and only have to do, you know, 4 or 5 week cuts in there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So it's like that's where we get, and it took me a really long time to get to that point to be able to do it efficiently. But and obviously there's a ceiling. It's not like you're just going to walk around shredded and all the time, but I mean, you can definitely get pretty efficient, I think, over the years.
Yeah, I definitely stayed leaner than I'd ever been on that last blast. I was surprised. I mean, up to about 8-9 weeks in, like, we were still pretty much not really gained any body fat by that point. And it kind of got skewed from there and pushed a bit more to that 13, 14 week mark. I think we did cut it at the right point, but I definitely stayed leaner than I'd ever been before. And the cut prior to that was like a 16-week cut, but this time we've done it in 9, or it's going to be 10 by next Tuesday.
Yeah, so less time and you're a lot leaner.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that's progress.
Yeah, so successful. Yep. Definitely. So I think by the time you're huge and 230 plus, I'm going to be like 195 and shriveled up, and should be good. You feel?
I wish I was 230 plus for the seminar, man. I'm only just going to be coming off this fat loss phase. Where am I going to be?
We're going to have to do super compensation. 150 I use the test for the week before.
150, that's baby doses. I was thinking
twice a day,
like the whole pen.
150
and just sit there with an IV dextrose drip.
That is the whole pen. 150 twice a day would be the whole pen.
Yeah, it would be the whole pen. Yeah, 300. Yeah.
There you go.
I did read some cool Lantus studies today on the half-life showing that actually with extended use the half-life extends, and it was more kind of efficacy for the single day dosing. It gets closer to like the 38-hour mark the longer you use it, which is more case to use it a single day. There's also more case why you might want to microdose GH daily rather than...
How long was the use though? Because I mean, most people...
It was elongated daily for diabetics, so it was over. But it set in fairly fast. I think it was within 16 to 21 days, something like that. The half-life had extended to almost half its original value.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Interesting.
So I thought it was like just about 24 hours, tailing off by the sort of 14-hour mark, but it goes way ahead of that.
Yeah, I wonder, like I said, I wonder how applicable that is to somebody that's not going to use it 100%. Because, I mean, you're still taking breaks periodically. Yeah. So, I don't know.
I mean, if I was going to use it for the 12-week blast, it would probably, if I was taking a couple of days off a week, I'd only be off it like half the day.
Right.
So yeah. It might be worth just running it. Running that.
Yeah, so the we got a seminar coming up too. We're getting close.
Oh yeah,
closer.
We're about 2 weeks away, man. That's pretty cool. That's crept up fast, man. I remember when that was just a dot on the horizon.
Yeah. We little did we know it would come true. So
yeah,
should be good. We've got everything's all lined up on my end. Got my passport and all that ready to go. So
that's on the 13th of May for anybody listening. It's at Blood, Sweat and Tears, BST Gym, Northampton, which is right in the centre of Northampton, which is literally smack bang in the middle of England. So anybody can get there. We did hold off a few places that we're just kind of flogging off now nearer the time. So we've got a few places left. So if anybody listening wants to come, drop us a message and you can come. It's what's the price? £100, is it?
Yep, the whole day.
Yep. Yeah, £100 for the whole day.
That includes the whole day. It's going to be essentially. I mean, the seminar is about 2/3 of the day, and then we're going to train. Camp T-shirts for everyone. I mean, it's well worth. It's worth a lot more than 100.
Oh, for sure, man.
We'll say that
for sure.
But yeah, we're looking forward to it. I definitely, like I said, I posted the other day. The only thing I'm not looking forward to is the really long flight. But that's.
Is it just?
I'm going to try.
Do you not have any stops, or is it just straight over?
Yeah, we have 2 stops, but I could do one. There was an option to do 1 stop, but actually the time the way that the one that did a one stop had a longer layover. So really the 2-stop one was actually shorter because it had 2 shorter layovers. So it ended up being like, I don't know, it was like 14 and a half hours or something like that. We stop in JFK, which is New York City, which a lot of flights fly through there because it's close. It's like a huge airport and it's close to, it's close to the water. So, I mean, it's kind of the last stop. And then we go to Amsterdam and then England. So.
And you land in Luton, don't you?
Ah, shit. I can tell you. I don't remember.
Luton or Heathrow?
It wasn't, because it wasn't, we talked about several different airports and it wasn't.
It's not Birmingham.
I'm going to tell you. No, it wasn't. I'm going to tell you right now.
It's going to be, I'll put my money on Luton.
We go to BHX.
BHX? What's that, Birmingham?
Yeah, it is Birmingham.
Oh, shit. I didn't know you landed in Birmingham. No, that's cool, man. It's up the street. Yeah, Birmingham's cool, man. Birmingham's like centre of bodybuilding for... that's where Body Power's going on that weekend. Man, you should hit Emporium Gym whilst you're down Birmingham. Sick gym.
Maybe on Saturday if we're gonna kind of hash out the plan. See, with me being in prep too, I need to figure out that week. I'm gonna try to really maybe cram my cardio and stuff before, like earlier in the week, the total amount for the week, and not have to do it while I'm there. Not ideal, but I just know that my body's going to be kind of stressed just from the flight and all that stuff. So actually we go Columbus to Detroit, Michigan, which I have no fucking idea why. That doesn't make any sense, but we go Columbus, Detroit to Amsterdam to Birmingham. So that's
man. Yeah, Birmingham's like half an hour up the road. So yeah, it's no sweat.
Is the Amsterdam airport very big or no?
I have no idea. No idea.
Yeah. Because our layover is actually only... no, I lied. Our layover is 2 hours and 20 minutes. So that's plenty of time to find the flights. Because, I mean, you get some... I don't know what your airports are like, but there's certain airports here. Like, if you have an hour or less layover, like, you might not even make your flight. If you go to somewhere big like Atlanta Airport or Los Angeles or something, they're so fucking big that it's
really that bad. Birmingham's a really nice airport. It's not huge, but you'd be fine with that time. Yeah,
plenty of time. So cool, man. We're looking forward to it. I know Jerica's pretty excited. Traveling is kind of on her bucket list, so she's traveling, she's living vicariously through my business because we travel
off as an expense, man. Get the tax, man.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, most of the stuff that we do, like when we travel, it's all written off tax wise because it's all business related. So, but yeah, kind of win-win. But
so you're getting on Saturday?
Yeah, so. I have it all. I have the itinerary pulled up right here. It's we land at 8:30 a.m.
Okay.
Saturday.
What, English time?
So it's not it's not too terribly
early.
That's
good. It
so
gives you time to do something.
Right. Yeah, that was the plan. So we land at 8:30 a.m. and then our return is 9:15 a.m., which I tried not to, because they had really early ones, but I wanted to try to make it a little bit later in the morning. That way it wasn't like too hard to get to the airport in time,
Yeah. So there's a few things you could do that Saturday. I mean, you probably wouldn't want to spend your only day in England walking around Body Power, because to be honest, Body Power's shite. And you've been to the Arnold, so that's going to be better than any other fitness expo. Probably go and see a bit of England, You could go around Birmingham a bit. Although Birmingham's a bit like, okay. Or even head over to London, have a look around London.
Yeah, see, I'm going to kind of leave it up to Jerica. I want her to... Yeah. I'm going to let her let her kind of pick out what she wants to do. And obviously, as long as it's within a relatively good distance that we're not going to waste the whole day.
Yeah, good thing about England, though, because it is, like, you could get the train from Birmingham, or even, no, I'm picking you up. I could get you to London, like, quick, in like an hour and a half. And then you'd be in the centre with all the tourism. And I could just bring all your meals that you need, everything that you need, and then that's it, you sorted.
Yeah, so the meal, yeah, definitely gonna have to give you my meals for a few days, Saturday, Sunday.
Just send me your meal plan. I'll cook it up and Tupperware it, and there you go.
Yeah, that was my plan. I told you that if you weren't going to be able to do it, then I had a couple clients over there that were coming to the seminar too that live close that I'm going to have. It's like, hey, you want to prep my meals?
I know the feeling, man. I wouldn't want you to do that, especially during prep, man. You got to stay on top. I'm like that. If I travel anywhere, I have to know that everything's set. Have to know. So, and you know what I'm like anyway. I'm neurotic, obsessive arsehole anyway. So I'd want to do that anyway.
Yeah. So I think it'll be good, man. We're looking forward to it. I know I can't even remember who all's going. I know I have the list, but it's going to be fun. We have a couple good characters in there. We get to meet Gary.
Oh, Gary's
That's
going to be awesome.
I think we should have we should have a lunch break, and Gary can do just freestyle stand-up.
Stand-up, yeah.
He can just freestyle it.
Man, he cracks me up daily. I fucking love it. His comments on the group are so funny.
And I friended him on my personal page too, so now he just comments all kinds of random shit on my posts. And people like, I get it and I think it's funny, but people probably wonder who the fuck this guy is.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, I read it like, what? Nonsense. Sometimes I think that's hilarious, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we haven't met him, but he actually, some of his references are really intelligent. Like he has to be a pretty intelligent guy, because some of the references he makes are pretty thoughtful.
He's older than my parents. I find that bizarre.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I have a lot of clients that are as older than my parents. How old are your parents?
Both 50. No, they've both just turned 51 in the last week.
Okay. So, I mean, close to what mine are. My parents were kind of young when I was born, but my dad's 49. My mom's 47. So close to that.
Young parents.
Yeah. Well, Jerica's parents are really young.
Oh, yeah?
Her stepdad that she grew up with is only like, he's only like 41.
Shit.
Something like that. Yeah. So
that's pretty crazy when you scale it down.
Well, when we are in public together, people think that we're, like brothers or something. So.
Well, people always say me and my dad are brothers because he looks really young. We was in the co-op before. Some woman went, "Oh God, you wouldn't guess you two weren't twins." I said, "We're not fucking twins." He's 30 years older than me.
Joe, does he look really young, or you just look old and tattered?
Thing is, mate, it's the combination. It's the high systemic IGF-1 with the stressful relationship of living with a woman that loses everything that you give her. It's aged me.
and pours all your Carterine down the drain.
Oh, don't, mate. It's something every day. I gave her a phone. Gave her a phone. Lost it, or she says she got it robbed. So got it robbed. I gave her a car, new car, crashed it. 3 days later, no, the same day I gave her a new car, she lost the keys to it, and then the next week she crashed it. So, oh my God, it's a good job I don't get stressed about stuff, or I'd have been dead years ago. Yeah,
though, I think that I had I'm trying to think who it was. I was actually a psychologist that I knew. He was a friend. He wasn't like a personal psychologist, but he was. That's what his occupation was, clinical psychology, and he kind of talked about just adapting to stress. And I've talked about this too, how life experiences, and people go through more stressful situations, and in our case, even like just dealing with feeling kind of down and out when you're in a cutting phase, like something simple like that. Most people aren't used to walking around like that every day. So it kind of makes things, it kind of puts things into perspective where it's just like Jerica and I mean, something that's like a 10 on her stress, her stress meter is like a 1 to me, it doesn't.
Yeah, exactly the same. Exactly the same.
It doesn't register to me because I'm like, wait, well, doesn't stress me out, because I mean, that's a good day for me, So
the fact that I don't get stressed out stresses Jasmine out. She'll go like, oh, of course you wouldn't be bothered. Nothing bothers you, does it? Not really, no. I don't give a fuck. That's good. Like, just don't let it. But then that's easy to say, isn't it?
Well, they think that you don't. The problem is that they think that you don't care. You're like, oh, yeah. You don't even care. I'm like, no, it's just that it's not worth, like, there's some shit that just isn't worth caring about. That's the truth.
Well, yeah, the thing I will say to Jasmine is, like, to be honest with you, I don't care, because there's nothing,
right?
Compared to a lot of people's problems, like losing your phone, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, but that's a okay trait to have for sure.
Yeah. Why stress, man? I'm too concerned with my physique goals to get stressed. That's what it boils down to.
It's that's funny. I mean, I think we do stress about certain things, little things like with physique stuff that people probably think is insignificant, but we're just used to it. I mean, you get little things like, it could be anything gets fucked up. Something happens at the gym, piece of equipment's broke. I know you were dealing with that stuff.
Yeah, that's
at your gym.
Out. Yeah, to be honest, things to do with training or to do with eating, going off track, do stress me out. But that's it. That's probably the only thing in life I can think that could possibly cause me stress.
Right. Yeah. Understand.
Anyway, I'm going to bed, mate. It's 10 to midnight. So, yeah.
I'm going to get going on my I have more cardio to do, so I'm going to do that now.
God damn. I got that tomorrow morning when I wake up.
Yep.
I'd rather not.
That's all right. It's all for a good cause.
Yep. Not too much longer now to go anyway, so a few more days. Oh, right.
Alrighty.
Good stuff. We'll cut off here. Right, thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for listening to the ramble, if you stuck along for that end bit. Everybody's social media and sponsor links and Alex's links and links to the seminar are going to be down below. Hit me up with any questions or inquiries at all, or Austin, or Alex if you want Alex for anything. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next Thursday.